Welcome to the Sleepy Underworld, a place where romance blooms, magic sparkles, and timeless fairy tales are reimagined for the dreamers of today. From heart-stirring romances to spellbinding adventures, every story is a soothing escape into a realm of love, wonder, and charm. So curl up, press play, and let us carry you away to the land of dreams. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. We'd love to know in what part of the world you are watching and what is your favorite tip for a good night's sleep. Thank you for watching and enjoy the video. The scent of gardenias and rain-soaked earth fills my lungs as I step into my backyard, drawn to Mama's ancient magnolia tree. Its leaves rustle like whispered secrets in the twilight breeze, dark branches stretching toward a pearl-white moon. My work boots sink slightly into the damp grass, still soft from the afternoon shower that left everything gleaming and fresh. My fingers tremble as I touch the letter in my apron pocket. Micah's acceptance to Vanderbilt University. The heavy cream paper feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds, though it's barely heavier than the morning dove feather I found this morning while sweeping the shop. Pride and fear wage war in my chest. Pride for my brilliant boy who's worked so hard. Fear because the numbers in my ledger keep bleeding red. The evening air carries the sweet perfume of the roses I'd arranged earlier at Richardson's Flowers and Gifts, my little shop on Main Street. Today I'd created 3 wedding bouquets, each petal placed with precision, while my mind wandered to the stack of unpaid bills waiting at home. The final notice from the electric company glares at me in particularly angry red letters. $487.32 past due. Micah's voice drifts through his open bedroom window, his warm tenor mixing with the chirp of crickets as he practices his violin. The same instrument his grandmother left him, the one he's played every evening since he was 7. Now, at 18, he creates music that makes even the mockingbirds pause to listen. A cool breeze stirs my hair, carrying an impossibly familiar scent. Honey and jasmine, Mama's signature perfume. My heart skips a beat. I haven't smelled that particular combination since she passed 5 years ago. But it wraps around me now like one of her Sunday morning hugs, warm and real enough to bring tears to my eyes. That's when I see it. A single magnolia blossom high in the branches, glowing with a soft golden light that pulses like a gentle heartbeat. It shouldn't be possible. Magnolias don't bloom in autumn, and they certainly don't glow like captured starlight. Yet there it is, beckoning to me with an otherworldly radiance. My hands move of their own accord, reaching upward. The rough bark of the tree scrapes against my palms as I stretch toward the blossom. As my fingers brush its velvet soft petals, warmth surges through me like summer sunshine. And Mama's voice echoes in my memory. Love grows in its own time, sweet girl. Trust in the magic that runs in our blood. The blossom comes away easily, its petals impossibly warm and alive in my palm. Golden light spills between my fingers like honey, and the air fills with the scent of summer mornings and childhood memories. I remember Mama telling stories about our family's magnolia tree, how it had been planted by my great-great-grandmother, how it bloomed with magic for those who needed it most, but only if their hearts remained open to love's possibilities. Morning arrives with the taste of possibility in the air. Sunlight streams through the shop windows, catching dust motes that dance like tiny stars as I position the mysterious magnolia blossom in my grandmother's crystal vase. Its glow has faded, but the petals retain an unusual iridescence, like mother of pearl in certain lights. The bell above the door chimes, and I look up to find a stranger studying my latest window display. He's tall, with silver threading his dark hair and laugh lines etched around kind eyes. His charcoal suit speaks of city sophistication, but his rolled-up sleeves and loosened tie suggest comfort with getting his hands dirty. "I'm James Sullivan," he introduces himself, his voice warm like aged bourbon. "I'm a wedding planner from Nashville, and I couldn't help but notice your work. There's something extraordinary about your arrangements." His eyes linger on a cascade of wildflowers I'd finished that morning. Queen Anne's lace dancing with purple coneflowers and black-eyed Susans, all tied together with sprigs of wild mint that fill the air with their clean, sharp scent. "I have a client in Memphis," he continues. "Old money, very particular. They want something unique for their daughter's wedding, something that tells a story. Would you be interested in creating their arrangements?" My pulse quickens at the opportunity, but practicality wars with hope. Memphis is quite a distance. "I'll handle all the logistics," he assures me, his smile reaching his eyes. "I just need your artistic touch." That evening, as I tell Micah about the opportunity over his favorite meal of chicken and dumplings, my grandmother's recipe, he reaches into his worn backpack for a notebook and pulls out a forgotten scholarship application instead. "Mom, this is weird," he says, his brow furrowed. "I could have sworn I submitted this months ago. It's for the Wilson Foundation grant. The deadline is tomorrow." The coincidence sends a shiver down my spine, and I think of the glowing magnolia blossom. The following weeks unfold like a time-lapse of a garden blooming. The Memphis wedding becomes a showcase for my work, leading to 3 more high-profile events. My phone rings with inquiries from Nashville socialites and Memphis aristocrats. Each arrangement I create seems to carry a hint of magic. Flowers staying fresh longer than they should, colors appearing more vibrant than nature typically allows. James visits regularly, ostensibly to discuss business. But our conversations meander like garden paths, touching on personal grounds. He tells me about losing his wife Rebecca to cancer 5 years ago, and about raising their daughter Emma alone. I share stories about Micah, about Mama, about my dreams of expanding the shop. One evening, as golden hour paints the shop in honey-colored light, we reach for the same spool of copper ribbon. Our fingers touch, and that same warm current I felt from the magnolia blossom courses through me like summer lightning. Neither of us pulls away. "Ava," he says softly, his voice barely louder than the humming of the ceiling fan. "I haven't felt this way since Rebecca. I know it might be too soon, but there's something here that feels like coming home." "It's not too soon," I whisper, the truth of it settling in my bones like the first warm day of spring. That night, the magnolia tree blooms again, a single perfect flower glowing like captured moonlight. As I reach for it, an envelope flutters down from the branches like a fallen leaf. Inside is a letter from Vanderbilt University, announcing an anonymous donation, a full scholarship in Micah's name. The paper trembles in my hands as tears blur my vision. Through them, I watch in wonder as more blossoms open on the magnolia tree, each one shining with its own inner light, turning our backyard into a constellation of earthbound stars. The crunch of gravel announces James's arrival. He'd followed me home, concerned when he saw me rush out of the shop. Now he stands beside me, his sharp intake of breath telling me he sees the impossible beauty before us. "It's magical," he breathes with wonder in his voice. "It is magic," I tell him. And for the first time, I share the story of our family's enchanted tree. He listens without judgment, his hand finding mine in the darkness, his thumb tracing gentle circles on my palm. "I believe it," he says simply. "I've felt it since the first day I walked into your shop. There's magic in the way you arrange flowers, in how you love your son, in the way you've opened your heart to me." The back door creaks and Micah steps out, violin in hand. He takes in our joined hands, the glowing tree, and the letter I'm still clutching. A smile spreads across his face, not the careful one he's worn since his father left, but one full of joy and possibility. He lifts his violin to his shoulder and begins to play. The sweet notes of amazing grace float into the night air, weaving through the branches of the magnolia tree like ribbons of sound. The glowing blossoms pulse in time with the music, creating a symphony of light and melody that fills our small backyard with magic. The three of us stand together beneath the luminous canopy, and I feel the truth of what Mama always said. The greatest magic comes from love freely given and received, from hearts brave enough to bloom again after winter's frost. Later that night, as I prepare for bed, I find one final magnolia blossom on my windowsill. As I lift it, it dissolves into sparks of golden light that swirl around me like fireflies before fading away. But its message remains clear in my heart. Everything blooms in its own perfect time, and love, like flowers, returns with each new season. Micah leaves for Vanderbilt in the fall, his dreams intact and his future bright. James and I continue to nurture our relationship, letting it grow naturally like a well-tended garden. My shop flourishes, filled with the sweet scent of success and the warm buzz of happy customers. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the light turns golden and the air grows soft, I sit beneath the magnolia tree. It looks ordinary now, its branches bare of any magical blossoms. But I know its secret, that the real magic was never in the tree itself, but in the love it helped me recognize. The fierce love I have for my son, the tender love growing between James and me, and the eternal love that connects all of us to something larger than ourselves. The tree doesn't need to glow anymore to remind me of its lessons. I see them everywhere, in the way morning light catches the dew on rose petals, in the sound of Micah's laughter through the phone as he tells me about his classes, in the gentle way James touches my cheek when he kisses me goodnight. Love, I've learned, is like my mama's magnolia tree. It roots deep, reaches high, and blooms most beautifully when we trust in its power to transform our lives. Each evening now, as I lock up the shop and head home, I catch the faint scent of honey and jasmine on the breeze. I smile, knowing that some magic never fades. It just changes form, blooming again and again in the garden of our hearts, as eternal and ever-changing as the seasons themselves. Moonlight poured through our third-floor apartment window like liquid silver, casting gentle stripes across the worn ivory keys of our Baldwin upright piano. The brass pedals caught the light, their scratched surfaces telling stories of countless hours of practice and performance. My fingers hovered over middle C, my muscle memory yearning to slip into autumn in New York, but I held back. In our aging building with its paper-thin walls, Mrs. Rodriguez next door would hear every note. The sharp scent of diner coffee still clung to my uniform, mingling with the chalky residue from my morning job at the elementary school. 2 jobs barely kept us afloat, and the stack of bills on the coffee table grew more daunting each week. The latest edition, Layla's AP Music Theory textbook invoice, was perched on top, the $300 price tag a taunting reminder that I was broke. From her bedroom came the soft sound of my daughter's breathing, as familiar to me as any jazz standard I'd ever performed. At 16, Layla carried music in her blood just as I had, but where I once commanded stages with electric confidence, she buried her gift behind shower song whispers and bedroom door melodies. A floorboard's gentle protest announced Layla's presence before I saw her. There she stood in the doorway, wrapped in her grandmother's quilted robe, the once vibrant purple now softened to the color of dusk. Her dark curls tumbled wild and free around her face, so like mine at her age that my heart constricted with the sight. "Can't sleep?" I whispered into the midnight quiet. She patted across the floor, her bare feet silent on the worn hardwood, and joined me on the piano bench. The ancient wood creaked softly beneath us, a sound that carried echoes of countless lullabies and bedtime stories. "Andrea Martinez is performing at Carnegie Hall next month," Layla said, her voice barely audible as her fingers traced invisible patterns on her pajama pants. "She's only 14, Mom. Everyone says she's destined for greatness." The weight of deferred dreams hung heavy in her words. Memories flooded back, standing under the hot lights at the Blue Note, my voice soaring over a packed house while saxophone riffs wove through the melody like golden threads. That taste of success had been intoxicating, until 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test rewrote my story. "You know what my grandmother used to tell me?" I said, my fingers finding their place on the keys. "Every voice has its season to bloom. Like flowers, some open in spring, others wait for autumn, but each one brings its own perfect beauty when the time is right." I began to play our family lullaby, a melody passed down through generations of women. The notes seemed to take on a life of their own, shimmering in the air like heat waves rising from summer pavement. They glowed with an impossible golden light that didn't belong in our dimly lit living room. Then came the miracle. Layla started to sing. Her voice joined mine, pure and clear as mountain spring water. Our harmonies intertwined like loving arms, mother and daughter, past and present merging into something greater than ourselves. The golden light grew stronger until it pulsed with each note. At that moment, I could have sworn I caught the sweet scent of my grandmother's gardenia perfume and felt the ghost of her hand against my cheek, just as I had when she first taught me this song 30 years ago. That night marked the beginning of Layla's transformation. Like a flower turning toward the sun, her confidence grew with each passing day. She stopped hiding her voice and began humming while doing homework, singing along to the jazz records she'd once ignored. The magic in our shared melody had awakened something essential in her soul, the understanding that music wasn't about perfection or performance, but about love made audible. When the Manhattan School of Music's letter arrived announcing auditions for their Young Artists program, I found my daughter in the bathroom, her trembling hands clutching the cream-colored envelope. "I can't," she whispered, but her eyes told a different story. They were bright with the same hunger that had once burned in my own heart. We recorded her audition video in the school auditorium after hours, thanks to Mr. Thompson, her choir director who'd believed in her since day one. She sang, "Someone to Watch Over Me," her voice carrying all the longing and hope I'd once poured into that same song. The email requesting a live audition felt like the universe confirming what I'd always known. My daughter was born for this. Then came the migraines. At first, I dismissed them as stress headaches from picking up extra shifts to save for the audition trip. But they worsened, bringing waves of dizziness that made the diner's checkered floor swim beneath my feet. Then there was the bone-deep fatigue that no amount of coffee could touch. When I collapsed during Mrs. Jackson's daughter's piano lesson, the world spinning into darkness, there was no more denying something was wrong. The neurologist's words fell like hammer blows: glioblastoma, aggressive growth, immediate treatment needed. But one phrase wounded me to the core: 6 months, maybe 8 with treatment. Layla refused to leave my side, ready to withdraw her application. But I wouldn't let her sacrifice her dreams the way I had once sacrificed mine. Between rounds of chemotherapy that turned my world inside out and left my skin feeling like it was on fire, I taught her the lullaby's deepest secrets: how to let the magic flow from your heart to your voice, how to weave love into every note. The night before her rescheduled audition, I was too weak to sit up. Layla brought her laptop to my hospital room, and we watched videos of my old performances at the Blue Note. In one, I wore the midnight blue dress that now hung in her closet, my voice riding the rhythm section like a bird catching an updraft. "Why did you really stop?" she asked, her warm hand holding mine. "Was it because of me?" I turned to face her, ignoring the pull of my IV lines. I stopped performing because I found something better. Every smile, every laugh, every song I shared with you meant more than all the applause in the world. The steady beep of monitors kept time as she curled beside me in the narrow bed. "Sing with me, Mom? One last time before tomorrow?" The lullaby rose between us, softer now but no less powerful. Golden light danced through the sterile hospital room, chasing away shadows of illness and fear. For a fleeting moment, The pain ebbed away like the retreating tide, leaving only something more powerful in its wake. Love, as pure and boundless as music. Morning brought a fever that kept me from traveling to Manhattan. Through a shaky FaceTime connection, I watched Layla enter the auditorium, wearing my old dress carefully altered to fit her younger frame. The video failed just as she stepped up to the microphone. I drifted between consciousness and dreams, hospital monitors marking time instead of metronomes. Then something changed. Warmth spread through my chest, different from the burning of the medication. A song echoed in my bones, familiar as my own heartbeat. Layla was singing our lullaby. Miles away, on a stage in Manhattan, my daughter's voice carried the magic we'd shared, strengthened by generations of love and sacrifice. The golden light surrounded me, brighter than ever, and I felt strength returning with each note. Later, she told me how it happened. How stage fright had frozen her until she remembered my words about music being love made audible. How she'd closed her eyes and sung our song, letting its magic fill the hall, until even the stern-faced judges wiped away tears. The day her acceptance letter arrived, full scholarship included, coincided with the week my doctor used the phrase, unexplained regression. Science couldn't explain my recovery, but I knew the truth. Love is the oldest magic there is, and music is its purest expression. 1 year later, I stood on the stage of the Blue Note, my fingers resting on piano keys that felt like old friends. The spotlight warmed my skin as I watched Layla step to the microphone, confidence flowing from her like light. My hands found the opening chords of Autumn in New York, and when she sang, every dream I'd ever had paled in comparison to that moment. Her voice soared through the club, carrying echoes of every lullaby, every lesson, every moment of love between mothers and daughters since time began. The golden light shimmered around us, visible now only to those who knew its secret. But everyone in the room felt its effects. In the tears that slipped down cheeks, in the way strangers reached for their loved ones' hands, in the pure joy radiating from two women who had found their dreams in one another. As the final note faded into reverent silence, I understood that some songs never truly end. They live on in the spaces between heartbeats, in the quiet moments before dawn, in the love passed down from a mother to a daughter. They're in every lullaby sung to a sleepless child, every melody that gives courage to the fearful, every note that carries healing to those in pain. The magic wasn't in the song itself, but in what it revealed. That love, like music, transcends time and space, illness and fear. It transforms and heals, gives courage and hope. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, it helps us find our way back to dreams we thought were lost, only to discover they've grown into something even more beautiful than we imagined. Layla turned to me as applause filled the club, her smile brighter than any spotlight. In her eyes, I saw my mother, my grandmother, all the women who had sung their love through generations. The melody lived in us still, golden and eternal as the bond between mother and daughter, ready to be shared with those who needed its magic most. Outside, the New York night pulsed with its own rhythm, taxi horns and subway rumbles, laughter and footsteps, all the songs of the city we now called home. But in that moment, there was only this: a mother, a daughter, and the music that had saved them both. As we took our final bow, our hands clasped tight, I knew that our story, like our song, would echo through time, touching hearts and healing souls long after the last note had faded away. I remember the day magic crept into my kitchen like a warm summer breeze, though it was the coldest winter Chicago had seen in decades. The wind howled through the gaps in our window frames, and my calloused hands trembled as I sorted through another bundle of forgotten laundry. The sharp scent of lye soap filled my nostrils as I searched the pockets, praying to find enough coins to buy milk for my girls. Our tiny apartment smelled of cabbage and coal smoke. the sense of poverty that no amount of scrubbing could erase. The sheets I was folding belonged to Mrs. Henderson, or so I thought. She hadn't returned for them in months. The cotton was worn thin from years of washing, soft as dove feathers beneath my work-roughened fingers. I shook out the yellowed linens, and something solid thumped against the wooden floor, the sound echoing in our sparse room. A cookbook. Its leather cover was worn smooth as butter, the spine cracked and mended like the hands that now held it. Golden letters flickered in the light filtering through our frosted windows. The secret recipe of hope. The pages rustled as I opened them, releasing the faint scent of vanilla and something else. Something that reminded me of my mother's kitchen in better days. I almost tossed it aside. Hope wouldn't feed my 4 daughters or pay our overdue rent. But something about it called to me, like the memory of my mother's voice singing in her kitchen on Sunday mornings, the aroma of fresh bread mixing with hymns. That night, with barely enough flour to dust a countertop, I followed the simplest recipe in the book. The ingredients list read like poetry. 2 cups of patience, a handful of trust, and enough faith to fill a thimble. Below these fanciful measurements were real ones for a basic loaf of bread. The flour felt different somehow as I measured it, warmer than it should have been in our cold kitchen, almost silken between my fingers. As I kneaded the dough, memories of better days flooded back. Picnics in Lincoln Park with checkered blankets and lemonade so cold it made your teeth ache. My late husband Thomas's laughter rumbling like distant thunder, my girls playing hopscotch on sun-warmed sidewalks. The dough seemed to pulse beneath my fingers, warm and alive, responding to each press and fold like a living thing. The heat from our temperamental oven turned the kitchen windows foggy, and when I pulled out the bread, the tiny loaf had somehow multiplied, filling our kitchen with the aroma of childhood summers and safety. The crust was golden brown, crackling softly as it cooled, sending wisps of steam into the chilly air. "Mama, it smells like heaven," little Rose exclaimed, her hollow cheeks already gaining color from the steam. The other girls gathered around, Emily, my oldest at 12, who'd grown too serious too soon, Margaret, my dreamer with ink-stained fingers, and sweet Catherine, who still hummed herself to sleep every night despite our hardships. That first bite melted on our tongues like morning sunshine, soft and warm and full of impossible things. For the first time in months, my daughter's laughter echoed off the peeling wallpaper, bright and clear as chapel bells. Even Emily's solemn face cracked into a smile as crumbs caught in her dark curls. The next morning, Mr. O'Malley, our landlord, knocked on our door. His heavy footsteps on the stairs usually sent my heart racing, but today was different. When I opened the door, the perpetual scowl on his ruddy face had softened. His cap was in his hands, and the smell of fresh bread still lingered in the hallway. "Mrs. Carroll," he said, shuffling his feet on our worn welcome mat. "I've been thinking. Times are hard for everyone. Maybe we can work something out about the rent. And perhaps..." He paused, looking almost shy. "You might be willing to trade some of that wonderful bread as part of the arrangement." That's when I knew. The cookbook wasn't just paper and ink. It was something more. Something that whispered of comfort and hope and possibilities. I began experimenting with other recipes. A pot of vegetable stew stretched impossibly to feed not just us, but the Martinez family downstairs who'd lost everything in the crash. Steam rose from the pot like a blessing, carrying the scent of rosemary and possibility throughout the building. When I baked sugar cookies that sparkled like fresh snow, Miss Thompson from the department store caught the scent as she passed by. She followed her nose to our door and offered me a job mending fine dresses, work that paid 3 times what I earned from taking in laundry. The cookies crumbled in her mouth as she spoke, and I watched joy light up her tired eyes. Word spread through the neighborhood about my cooking. Women with hollow eyes and empty pantries began appearing at my door, drawn by the perpetual warmth that now radiated from our apartment. I never turned them away. Each recipe required more than just ingredients. They demanded love, hope, and unwavering faith. If my heart wavered, if doubt crept in like winter frost, the magic faded like morning mist. The cookbook taught me its secrets slowly. A dash of cinnamon in the apple pie brought luck. You could smell it in the spicy sweet aroma that filled the kitchen. Rosemary in the bread prompted forgotten memories. One bite, and people would close their eyes, smiling at thoughts of happier days. Honey and tea healed more than sore throats. It mended broken spirits, its golden warmth spreading through the body like liquid sunlight. My girls flourished under the cookbook's gentle magic. Margaret, my second eldest, discovered she could make flowers bloom in window boxes even in December after eating my gardener's biscuits. The scent of lilacs and roses drifted down the street in midwinter, drawing amazed crowds. Catherine, always so quiet, found her voice after sipping mint-hot chocolate, her words flowing smooth and sweet as the drink itself. And Tiny Rose started dancing again, her feet as light as spun sugar, moving to music only she could hear. Then came the day the man in the charcoal suit appeared. His shoes were polished to mirrors, his hat tipped at a rakish angle, but his eyes were empty as dried wells. The scent of cold metal and dried leaves followed him up our stairs. "Mrs. Carroll," his voice oozed like cold molasses, "I believe you have something that belongs to me." He pulled out a wallet fat with bills, the leather creaking as he opened it. "Name your price." I looked at the cookbook, its pages now stained with butter and love, bookmarked with my daughter's drawings and pressed flowers from our tiny garden. In its margins I'd written my own notes. Add extra vanilla to lift spirits. Stir counterclockwise for good fortune. Always sing while kneading bread. The book warmed beneath my touch, as if seeking protection. "It's not for sale," I told him, my voice stronger than I felt. His smile never reached his eyes. "Everything has a price, Mrs. Carroll. Everything." "Not hope," I replied. "Not love." He left the scent of bitter almonds and disappointment in his wake. That night, our dreams were troubled, but I baked peace back into our home with lavender shortbread and chamomile tea. As the years passed, I noticed I needed the cookbook less and less. The magic had seeped into my hands, my heart, my very being. My little laundry service grew into a successful bakery, where every treat came with a side of comfort and courage. The scent of hope and fresh possibilities drifted down the street each morning as I opened the doors. My daughters grew strong and kind, each carrying a bit of magic in their souls. Emily became a teacher, feeding young minds with the same patience I'd learned from the cookbook. Margaret opened a flower shop that bloomed all year round, filling the neighborhood with impossible colors and fragrances. Catherine's voice carried hope through the radio waves, and Rose danced on stages across the country, leaving trails of joy in her wake. When they ask me about the secret of my success, I tell them what the cookbook taught me, that magic isn't in the ingredients or the instructions. It's in the love we stir into every pot, the hope we knead into every loaf, the faith we sprinkle over every life we touch. The cookbook still sits in my kitchen drawer, its magic waiting for the next person who needs it. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear it humming lullabies, reminding me that even in the darkest times, hope rises like bread in a warm oven, and love multiplies when you share it. My daughters have children of their own now, and when they visit, we bake together. Their children ask for the special cookies that make wishes come true, or the soup that chases away storms. I smile and tell them the real magic ingredient: love that's stronger than any depression, hope that rises higher than any bread, and faith that's sweeter than any dream. And sometimes, when the kitchen is quiet and the moon hangs like a silver dollar in the sky, I open the cookbook and whisper, "Thank you." The pages ruffle in response, and I smell vanilla and possibility, knowing that magic isn't something you find, it's something you create, one recipe at a time. The lavender-scented moisturizer lingered on my fingertips as I smoothed out Carter's wish paper, its cotton-soft texture catching slightly against my work-roughened hands. The translucent purple paper, decorated with tiny silver stars, had been Carter's special choice at the craft store. Perfect for magic, he'd declared with the absolute certainty that only a 6-year-old could possess. "This one's extra special, Mama," he whispered, his minty, fresh breath ghosting across my cheek as he carefully dropped the paper into our wish jar. The glass caught the warm glow of his constellation nightlight, creating a dance of tiny prisms across his bedroom walls. The jar had become our sanctuary of dreams in the past year, half full with dozens of carefully folded wishes. The evening air carried the sweet perfume of night-blooming jasmine through his cracked window. Our modest 5th-floor apartment might not have been much, but living next to Mrs. Santos's prized flower garden had blessed us with this small luxury. "They're all special, sweetheart," I murmured, running my fingers through his bath-damp curls that smelled of honey vanilla shampoo, the one he insisted made him smell like cookies. What had started as a way to help him process his feelings after his father left had evolved into something more profound, our private magic that transformed tears into possibilities. I pulled a fresh sheet of star-speckled paper out, cool and smooth against my palm. "What should Mama wish for tonight?" Carter's deep brown eyes sparkled in the soft light. "Something big. Something amazing." The layoff notice burned in my pocket, its crisp edges a reminder of how quickly security could crumble. "Company restructuring effective immediately," echoed in my mind like a cruel mantra. My fingers trembled as I held the paper, but I steadied them before Carter noticed. 8 weeks of savings stood between us and uncertainty, with rent due in just 3 weeks. The scratch of my pen against paper felt unnaturally loud as I wrote, "A way to keep our home filled with love and laughter." Each letter flowed in my best handwriting, a prayer disguised as a wish, vague enough not to worry Carter, but specific enough to hold my desperate hope. That night, after tucking Carter beneath his rocket ship comforter and ensuring his worn soft teddy bear was securely in his arms, I retreated to my room. The hardwood floor creaked beneath my feet as I settled cross-legged on my bed, cradling the wish jar in my lap. The glass felt cool and weighted, its surface decorated with tiny raised stars that Carter had insisted on adding with glass paint, creating our own private constellation. One by one, I unfolded his wishes, each crisp sound echoing in the quiet room. Moonlight streamed through my gauzy curtains, illuminating his childish handwriting. "I wish to be an astronaut and see the whole Earth from space and count all the stars. I wish Mama never has to cry when she thinks I'm sleeping because the walls are too thin. I wish we could stay in our apartment forever, because it's where all our memories are and where I learned to ride my bike in the hallway. I wish for someone to love Mama the way she deserves, someone who makes her laugh like she does when we have pillow fights." Tears welled up and spilled over as I read, one perfect droplet falling into the jar. As it hit the bottom, something extraordinary happened. The tear caught the moonlight and seemed to multiply, creating a cascade of shimmer that filled the jar with a pearl-like luminescence. I blinked hard, convinced exhaustion was playing tricks on my eyes. But as I went to close the jar, a warm breeze swept through the room, despite the closed windows. It carried the scent of jasmine, my namesake flower, mixed with something else, something that reminded me of starlight and possibility. The air wrapped around me like a gentle embrace, carrying the faintest whisper of wind chimes from somewhere distant. The magic unfolded the very next morning. Mrs. Santos caught me by the mailboxes, her silver hair catching the sunlight as she practically danced with excitement about her brother Antonio's new marketing firm downtown. They needed someone with exactly my experience. Then came the message from Thomas Rivera, my old college friend, about an amazing project with great pay and flexible hours. The property manager called about a rent reduction program, and my struggling Toyota suddenly purred to life after Carter patted its hood and whispered, "Be nice to Mama, please. We need you." But the real magic revealed itself when I met Jacob Wyman at Antonio's firm. His hazel eyes held flecks of gold that danced when he smiled, creating the same warmth as Carter's nightlight. During my interview, he didn't just see my portfolio. He saw me and understood the story behind every carefully crafted campaign and community initiative. The job offer came with a salary that made my hands tremble as I signed the contract. But Jacob turned out to be more than my new boss. He was a single father to Luna, a creative 6-year-old who shared Carter's capacity for wonder. Our families intertwined naturally, like stars forming a new constellation. Weekend playdates evolved into family dinners, where the aroma of Jacob's homemade pasta sauce filled my small kitchen, mixing with children's laughter and soft jazz. Luna turned my refrigerator into an art gallery while Carter transformed our living room into a space station. And Jacob filled the spaces we hadn't even realized were empty. One evening, as we sat on my small balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in amber and rose, Jacob's warm hand found mine, his fingers slightly rough from weekend woodworking projects fitting perfectly between my own. The touch sent electricity dancing up my arm and settling somewhere near my heart. "Luna asked me something interesting today," he said softly, the dying sunlight catching those gold flecks in his eyes. "Oh." My voice barely rose above a whisper. "She wanted to know if we could be a real family, all 4 of us. She said it feels like we're missing puzzle pieces that finally found one another." My heart performed a complicated gymnastic routine. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that some of the best families are the ones we choose for ourselves." His thumb traced patterns on my palm that sent shivers down my spine. "And I'd choose this. Choose you and Carter every single time." That night, after Jacob and Luna left, their warmth lingering in our apartment like a favorite song, Carter pulled out the wish jar. The glass caught the light differently now, seeming to hold shadows and starlight in equal measure. "Mama, look," he gasped, his voice filled with wonder. The jar was glowing with a soft, golden light that pulsed like a heartbeat. As we watched, breathless, Carter reached in and pulled out one of his old wishes. The paper had transformed into something ethereal, like starlight given form, with a texture somewhere between silk and morning dew. "I wish for someone to love Mama the way she deserves," he read proudly, the words shimmering in the air. "See? The jar is magic, just like I always told you." I gathered him in my arms, breathing in the sweet mixture of cookie-scented shampoo and ever-present jasmine. His small body fitted against mine perfectly, his little heart beating a rhythm that matched my own. "You know what, sweetheart? I think you might be right, but the real magic isn't in the jar. It's in believing that good things are possible, even when they seem impossible." Carter looked up at me with that ancient wisdom that sometimes took my breath away. "That's why we keep wishing, right, Mama? Because anything can happen if you believe?" "That's right, baby." I kissed his forehead, thinking of Jacob's gentle hands and warm laugh, Luna's artistic spirit and generous heart, Mrs. Santos's timely kindness, and all the small miracles that had led us here. And sometimes, the most magical wishes are the ones we didn't even know we needed to make. Later that night, as moonlight painted silver patterns on my wall, I added a new wish to the jar. May our hearts always stay open to magic. The paper seemed to glow as it settled among the others, and I could have sworn I heard the faint sound of wind chimes again. Years have passed, and the wish jar still sits on Carter's bedside table, catching light and storing dreams. Some wishes still wait to unfold, while others have blossomed in ways we never expected. Now when Carter tells me the jar is magic, I don't just smile and nod. I believe him. Because magic isn't about getting exactly what you wish for. It's about being open to the possibility that life has something even better in store. As I write this final wish and watch it settle among the others, I feel the love that surrounds us, Carter's unwavering belief, Luna's creative spirit, Jacob's steady devotion, and the countless kindnesses that carried us through our darkest times. Perhaps that's the greatest magic of all. Not the granting of wishes, but the way hope can transform tears into starlight, strangers into family, and an ordinary glass jar into a vessel of infinite possibilities. The jar's soft glow fills our home now, a constant reminder that sometimes the most powerful magic comes not from supernatural forces, but from the simple act of believing in better days. Each night, as I watch Carter and Luna add their wishes to our collection, their hands intertwined and their eyes bright with shared secrets, I'm reminded that true magic lives in the quiet moments between heartbeats, in the space between wishes, and in the love that turns ordinary glass into a container of dreams. And in those moments, I know with absolute certainty that some wishes don't need a jar to come true. They just need hearts brave enough to believe in their own magic.